Welcome to another episode of Give It a Nudge. Today, finally, we have the one and only Cheryl Mack in the studio. We've been trying to get her in here for a little while, but she's here, and we're here to talk about a lot of the different things she's done throughout her career, but also a lot around Aussie Angels, which is probably where her main focus is now. So welcome, Cheryl.
Thanks for having me today. I'm excited to be here.
You've been in here before. We haven't been in here before, but you've been to the studio before.
I have, yes.
And I wasn't here, and we didn't film. And
You
it was
abandoned
my
me
fault.
that day.
Abandon you is harsh, I feel. I think that's too much. I think I got caught up.
I was stood up that day.
So before we get on to Aussie Angels and how that works, and that's been going a couple of years, just for anyone who doesn't know you, and I think everyone who watches probably does, but just in case there's someone out there, a new member who doesn't know you, let's go back a little bit into where you're from and how you sort of got to where you are today. So not childhood, because someone did start there once, but really just how you ended up in this world of investment.
Yeah, so you might notice I don't sound Australian.
I did notice this.
You did notice? Yeah.
I did.
However, I am Australian, and the reason I'm Australian is because my parents were born in Australia, but they forgot to have me there, so that's a whole thing. However, I did grow up in Canada, and so I was living there for a while before I moved here. Yep. And I basically grew up in the startup world.
In Canada?
In Canada, yeah.
Whereabouts in Canada?
I grew up in Toronto, went to school in Vancouver. So I like to say I'm from the West Coast, even though technically I grew up on the East Coast.
I've been to Ottawa. It's the only place I've been in Canada.
That's a random place for you to only have gone, but okay.
I was 14. My parents took me there to see someone. Not for me to see someone. They were going to see someone.
Ah, right.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I mean, Ottawa's a cool place. We used to go there on field trips.
It's got all the green roofs, right? From the copper that's oxidized. I think so.
Yeah.
I remember that. Anyway.
Government. Anyway.
Back to Toronto.
Vancouver. So I went to university, but I basically started working for startups right out of the gate. I was like, screw those corporate jobs.
And how did that happen? Because that's not a long time ago, but it's, the startup scene's grown a lot in the last maybe 5, 6, 7 years.
In Australia, it has, God. When I moved from Canada to Australia, I was almost baffled at the nascent startup ecosystem there was here. There was no events. There was 6 investors. There were a handful of startups.
That's crazy.
There just wasn't very much.
So what year was that?
It was January of 2015.
Okay. So not that long ago at all.
No.
Just under 10 years.
Yeah. And so I started running StartupGrind.
Yep.
They had chapters all around the world. I'd started the Vancouver chapter.
Right.
I was one of the first 20 chapters. So I started running this StartupGrind event. And because of that, I got invited to this fancy dinner.
Yep.
Where I sit down and there's there's the Atlassian guys, there's I don't know, a bunch of big tech people that the 6 of them that there were.
All 6 of them.
Yeah, all 6 of them. But who sits across from me is Matt Barry, who was the founder of freelancer.com at the time. He still is, actually. And funny enough, I had just gotten hired at freelancer.com that week to I would just run up to them. I was like, guys, hire me. I want to come work here. Whatever you got. Cool.
Yep.
So hired me as an account manager. And he sits there and he goes, why is this person that we just hired sitting at this fancy tech founder dinner?
Yep.
What? And I'm like, hey, yep, I'm here.
And how old are you here? You're pretty young, right?
I was 23.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so then the next day he pulls me into the office. He goes, hey, you've got some event startup marketing experience, right? I'm like, yeah. That's kind of why I was there last night. Hi, by the way. And he's like, cool. So we just acquired this event. It's called Sid Start. It sucks. It's unprofitable. And do you want to run it? It's like, okay.
Sure.
Yep, sure. I turned that into Startcon.
Yes.
And built a company out of that. And from there, I got connected to a lot of startups and a lot of investors started bringing that community together and thinking, all right, well, how do we help deploy money into these companies? How do we help investors connect? How do we help founders find the right money for them? And that's where I just got super interested in that whole space. And then turns out when you're on the stage in front of thousands of people, people start to get to know you.
They think they know you.
Yeah,
they all think they know you.
They do. And they'd come up to me and be like, Cheryl, let's get a selfie. And can you help me raise? And can you do this? And I was like, wow, this is cool. Now everyone knows me.
You're a celebrity. You were an early startup celebrity.
Pretty much.
Now you see, that's why you're on this show today, so people can get to know you.
Yeah. Well, I'm an open book. Whatever you want to know.
So Startcon got massive, right?
It did, yes.
It got huge.
It did.
How many people did you end up have? How many people you have attending? How many people working in the business? Like, give us some ideas.
Oh, yeah. There was about 10 or 12 of us working in the business, including myself. And I was managing both the team here, but also a team overseas that did all of our tech.
Yep.
And the first year we ran it, it was like 1,500 people showed up. And the last year I ran it, about 4 or 5 years later, 4,000 people showed up.
Hard to get 4,000 people to show up to anything.
Yeah.
Like, that kind of event.
Yeah.
Like, that's wild.
But we made it really fun and created some very unique experiences that, like, it wasn't your standard conference where you show up at the Hilton and there's 3 rooms and, there's just a single kind of pull down. What's those things you pull down and put the projector on it?
The old screens.
Yeah, it wasn't a single pull down screen and there's no windows. No, like, we held it at the race course.
Yeah.
So it was just this very unique experience. People loved spending the day there. One year I actually got 3-meter tall blow-up unicorns and posted them around.
You love unicorns, though.
I do. Well, actually, that was the year that I became known as the unicorn person because the conference ran for 2-3 days. The first day, somebody stole one of those unicorns.
Really?
Yeah, and I'm like, this is an $800,000 unicorn. Like, it's a 3-meter tall unicorn. And so I started posting on Facebook and Twitter. And then the next morning I got on stage at 9 a.m. and I was like, so I have some really disappointing news, everyone. Unfortunately last night, Bluey was stolen. And I don't mean the dog, I mean the blue unicorn. And we are now on the hunt for our kidnapped unicorn. So if anybody knows where Bluey is, I need you to tweet. And so we just got this huge Twitter frenzy. And Bluey the unicorn was returned. That's how I became known as...
Do you know who took it?
Oh, yeah. I've held it against him ever since.
Didn't SaaStr copy that idea a few years later?
Probably.
I'm sure SaaStr in the States came up with a huge, I think theirs was inflatable, ridiculous, massive unicorn that you had to walk under to get into the conference. So give me an idea. You said some cool experiences. Give me one that you did that was... What was the wildest experience you reckon you took?
That we created at Startcon? Oh, man. I mean, so they had this chairman's lounge area in the race course. And when we booked the venue the very first year, they were like, this area is absolutely off limits. For no one ever, not possible. You can have the whole other venue, do whatever else you want, but this area is off limits. And slowly I chipped away at them and I'm like, okay, but what if? Absolutely not. And the next week, I'd be like, I hear you, but what if? So eventually we got them to agree that we could do a private pitch session in there for a very small group of investors where we would also have a visit from, I think it was the chairman or somebody really important at the race course who came in to judge / just introduce people, and there was a fancy drink thing.
Make sure you didn't wreck the place.
Basically. Yeah. They were like...
like a parent.
We need to make sure that... But it was such a beautiful area, and it just felt really special for those companies.
I don't think I've ever been in that area. It's the same. They haven't changed the race course since then, have they? No. Cool. And so, okay, so you're doing that. Where'd you go from there?
Oh, then I joined ACS, the Australian Computer Society. I was New South Wales GM for a little bit.
Yep.
And we launched and deployed a number of programs. We set up a new place in the Docklands in Melbourne.
Yep.
Then I joined Stone & Chalk. I was the national head of community.
I didn't know you worked at Stone & Chalk.
Yeah.
Did not know that.
Yeah, I was there for a year and a half, 2 years.
Yeah.
And I joined, and then COVID hit 3 weeks later.
Yeah.
So my job was to make sure that the community programs across all 3 of the locations, which then turned into 10, was to make sure that the community experiences were good. And then COVID hits.
So easy.
Yeah, and it's cool, now you got to do everything but online, and you can't really be in person. And I had all these community managers that reported to me that they were basically working from home trying to build it. It was just, it was crazy.
Did you enjoy COVID?
I mean, did anybody really enjoy COVID?
Well,
No,
a lot of businesses did very well out of it, right? And obviously, a lot of businesses didn't. But for all the losers, there were just as many winners.
Yeah.
But did you enjoy that time at home?
No, not really. I'm a very if there is a scale of 0 introvert and 100 extrovert, I'm 100 extrovert.
Yeah. So you just needed to get out.
Yeah, I was like, this is terrible. I can't.
Did you go walking like everybody else?
Yeah, but I also lived in the city at the time. So there were days where you would go out for a walk and there would be military guys walking around with their little rifles, being get back in your house. And I'd be like, cool, my house? No, you mean my apartment
Tiny
on
little
the 12th
apartment.
floor. that has a balcony about this big. And they're like, yeah, that, whatever it is, go back to it.
And lock yourself in there.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny. I mean, I reckon that COVID was pretty responsible for growing the startup ecosystem, I think.
In ways, I think a lot of people thought that it was going to be a doom and gloom scenario for the startup ecosystem, and it basically went the other way.
It did.
2020 and 2021 were absolutely crazy years for funding.
Yes.
Which was good in a lot of ways because it catalyzed a lot of people into getting interested in this space. A lot of investors made some crazy amounts of money, but a lot of investors invested during those periods where that trajectory is not continuing.
No.
So it was good and bad.
Yeah, I mean, we'd started Nudge 5 months before COVID. And I was like, this doesn't seem good. Because if you think about it then, in recruitment, no one ever interviewed anyone over a video. I think I'd done 2 video interviews before COVID. I think I've done 2 face-to-face interviews since COVID, actually. It just switched.
Yeah, it switched very quickly.
We didn't know. That was why we started this show, because we didn't know what we were going to do. So we thought, we better start doing something. So that's why we started doing this show. But it went ballistic. It just went ballistic. It was probably one of the best things for Nudge. Nudge was definitely a winner out of COVID.
Okay. Good.
Interestingly. So, Aussie Angels.
Yes.
Where'd the idea come from? You built it because it's a platform, right? It's a tech business. Yep. And who do you do it with? Is it just you? It's not just you, is it?
No, I've got 2 co-founders.
Yeah.
And then we've got a team of 4 as well. So there's 6 or 7 of us.
Okay, so you're going 2 years. How many investors you got on there now?
We have about 1,500 unique investors.
And can anyone join, or do you have to go through a process? Do you have to be sophisticated?
You have to be sophisticated or wholesale,
Yep.
Which just means that you either need to meet the net wealth test or have a lot of experience investing,
Yep.
or manage an AFSL.
Yeah. And so how did you go out and find those people? Were they just from your community? Did they find you? Talk to me about what made you do this?
So I started angel investing about 4.5, 5 years ago.
Yep.
And well, at first I kind of fell into it. But once I realized that that's what I was doing, I was like, shoot, I need to learn. I need to figure out what I'm doing. So I called up a lot of my good angel friends and was like, hey.
Angel friends. I like that term. Angel friends. That's a good term.
Yeah. I was like, hey, I think I might have started angel investing. Tell me everything I need to know. Go. And I got some really great advice. One of the things I was told was in the early days, when you don't have access to good deals and you don't really know what you're doing, try to follow people that you trust. So get in on the things that they're investing in because you trust them, right?
Makes sense.
So I spent a lot of my early first year being like, hey, what are you investing in? How do I get in on that? Can I put my check in alongside yours? And a lot of the time I got I don't know, your check's kind of small. I don't know if you had as much value. I don't know if I should introduce you to the founder. And that kind of sucked. But then fast forward a couple of years, and I'd been doing it enough because I did manage to, find some and talk my way onto a number of cap tables. Then fast forward a couple of years, and I started getting other angels coming to me being like, hey, Cheryl, what are you investing in? How do I get in on that?
Circle of life.
But I found myself saying, oh, I don't know. You don't really have
When did you realize you were doing that? When did you actually catch yourself and go, oh my God?
Probably the first couple of times because I was like, this is crap. I shouldn't be the one gatekeeping this. I've been there. I was in this position a year and a half, 2 years ago, and it sucked then. I don't want to create that for other people. So I was like, I know. I'll start a syndicate. That way the founder gets more money, I get a bit of a reward, and people get in on my deals. It's a win-win-win situation. And there's 10 syndicates in Australia, so how hard could it really be? Turned out...
A few rules and regulations around this somewhere?
Turned out very hard. Lots of rules and regulations, but more importantly, very expensive.
Really?
Yeah, if you want to start the next 1013 or Scale Investors or Gelix Syndicate when they ran it, you're looking at $100,000 to set up and another
Is that right?
Another $100,000 a year to maintain that.
I did not, because you know how many people say to me, I'm going to set up a fund. I reckon more people say that to me than hello.
Oh,
it's
100%. So many people I'm going to start a fund. I'm like, cool.
How much cash you got?
How much are you putting into the fund? Like, oh, I have to put money into the fund? I'm like, yeah, it's called GP commit, and investors look at that.
They do.
Anyway, once I realized how crazy expensive it was, I was like, well, okay, if I'm going to build this for me, I may as well build it in a way that allows everyone else or anyone else to use this as well. That way nobody else has to shell out this kind of money, because syndicates are actually one of the best ways of driving funding into the early stage ecosystem.
Absolutely.
And we've seen what's happened in the US to drive that. So I was like, we need this here. And so when I built it in a way that allowed other people to use the infrastructure that I've built.
Yeah.
I initially built it as a not-for-profit because I didn't know how much demand there would be. When we had 12 syndicates that were on the platform, I realized we need money to scale this.
Yep.
So we raised. And now we manage about 50 syndicates.
Is it 50?
And micro funds with about 1,500 unique investors, but about 2,500 LPs across all of the syndicates.
Wow. Did you raise for yourself on your own platform?
I did, yes.
See, there's pure belief in your own business.
Oh, 100%. 100%.
And so do you just want to keep growing it? Is that, or has it got a life of its own almost now, or?
Both, yes. Life of its own, but also, I want to keep growing it. Like, there were 400 deals done in
that's a lot.
Australia last year. It's not as many as 2021.
No, but everyone was funding everything.
Yeah.
I mean, they literally were funding everything.
But last year, there was about 400 deals. And
that's a lot, because it was quite a year.
Yeah.
I think it was the quietest year I've seen in terms of
since
growing
2019.
of those. Yeah, it was just super quiet.
But we did about 35. So that's about 8% of the market. I think
that's pretty high.
We can get to a stage where we are in, like, if you're raising, you've raised some of that amount through Aussie Angels. The thing is, we're giving people access to funding rounds that they would not otherwise have access to. When I say people, I mean investors.
Yeah.
Like, when you first start, getting your money into a good company is actually quite hard. And there's this concept of like adverse selection where, like, if you're brand new and you're getting access to something, it's probably because it's not that good of a deal and everyone else has said no. So when you first start, you want to take advantage of other people's access to that deal. And that's what we facilitate. So if you are looking to start writing your first couple angel checks, or even just expanding your portfolio, Aussie Angels is a really great place to do so.
So talk to me on both sides, right? Let's start with the investors. If I'm an investor and I want to come onto your platform, is it as simple, come on and apply? Do I have to call you? Can I just get on? Can I create my, how's it work?
You basically go on and just, so there's a list of syndicates. A syndicate is just basically a group of people that have decided, we want to invest together potentially in this particular theme. So for example, we have a couple syndicates on there that are climate tech focused. We have one that's focused on female founders. We have one that's focused on like startup infrastructure, and a number of like B2B SaaS ones as well. So you go on there and look through the list and decide, okay, I'm really interested in climate tech. So you apply to join that syndicate.
Right.
Most of the time you'll be accepted, except for a couple of the more exclusive ones.
And who decides? The syndicate decide? And
the syndicate decides.
Typically with a syndicate, is there an individual that runs it, or a couple of people who decide?
A couple like syndicate leads. We call them the syndicate leads.
Yeah.
So they're the ones who are leading that syndicate. And if they accept you, then it just means that when they invest in something, and every syndicate always has somebody that is investing personally. So mine is called CMAC Ventures, and when I invest in something, I just share the notes on why I'm investing and let people put their checks in alongside mine. So by joining syndicates, you're basically just putting up your hand to say, hey, let me know when you invest in something and I might want to put a check in alongside yours.
Cool, I like that. That's simple.
Yeah, it's very simple.
And what about if you're on the other end? What about if you want to get on the platform do you go on the platform as a founder, or is it you just have to find someone who's in one of your syndicates and get them to share you with their...
Yes.
Did I word that right? That was really,
I got what you
were
asking.
That was really poorly done. I did not articulate that well.
I get what you're asking.
Yeah. Does everyone else get what I'm asking?
So no, we don't work with founders directly.
Right.
The syndicate lead, so that investor who's making the investment decisions, we work with them. So they would find the startup, or those startups could just approach them and say, hey, I'm looking for investment. And the syndicate lead would say, yeah, I want to invest in this, or no, I don't.
So if you are a founder, how can you find out who's in your world?
So we do have the directory.
Oh, you can go on there and have a look, and you can start approach them.
You can approach them like separately, like go find out who they are and then go reach out to them on LinkedIn.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
I like it.
And the cool part about it is that as investors, you can invest as little as $5,000.
That's really
it's
it's
right, because if you're investing directly in a startup, normally you'd be looking at a minimum of a $25K check. But on Aussie Angels, you can split that across 5 companies, which gives you a little bit of diversity.
That's cool. I like that. Awesome. And so what else outside of that? Because that probably doesn't take up all your time, because it sounds like you're not busy at all. But I know you're doing other things, because you're one of those people, right? You're always doing more than one thing. What else are you doing as well on top of that?
So I run an angel club called 361 Angel Club.
So what happens in the club?
So every quarter in both Sydney and Melbourne, we host an event that is called 361 Angel Drinks. And we bring together 60 founders and 60 investors in one room for one night, like one night only.
One night only.
Yeah.
And what's the 361? Where does that come from?
It's such a silly name, but we started this in our friend's penthouse apartment at 361 Kent Street.
That's a good reason. I've got another
friend. There was a
who,
hot tub, and it used to be called 361 Hot Tub Summit.
Yeah, I can see why you changed it. I've got a friend who's got a business who named after the street that they were in when they came up with the idea. Sometimes that's all you need, right?
It's okay. It's a funny story now.
And so, all right, let's
I
talk
also
about
mentor
that.
for StartMade and a couple of their programs as well.
Yeah, you mentor a few people. But with that, your little club,
Angel Club, yeah.
how do you get involved in that? On either side, again, like if you're a founder and you want to come and hang out with your mates, or if you're someone who wants to be one of your mates, how do you get involved in that club? Can you find that online and join? Or
You can, kind of. You basically...
kind of, maybe, not.
Well, so it's not the most public thing. We typically invite the founders directly.
Yep.
So we pick a new set of 60 founders
Because it's quite a lot.
each event. Yeah.
So
But
that's
between
like
so
a
there's
quarter?
4... Yeah, every quarter.
Yeah, so
but there's 4
240.
founders of 361 Angel Club. So if we each invite 20, then we get there.
Yeah, I suppose that's true.
Yeah. So each quarter we pick a new set of founders. So if you are a founder and you want to just come, then you just have to find one of the 4 of us to reach out to. And generally, if I get an ask, I'll put you on the list. And then the investors, we maintain the same list. So we have about 400 or 500 investors that are like subscribed to the list, and we just send out the invite. And when we hit the 60 cap, we cut it off. And
Yeah, okay.
yeah, so it sells out very quickly.
This
so we
is
actually don't
Cheryl's
promote
world,
it
right?
At
This
all.
is your world's lots of little clubs.
Yeah, pretty much.
I like it.
I spend a lot of time out hanging, drinking.
Yep. Meeting people,
Meeting
extrovert,
people.
right?
Yes,
not locked
extroverted.
not locked in your apartment with a guy
No.
with a rifle outside, or a little rifle, as you put it, outside. And is there anything else on your horizon? Like, is there anything else that you have got? And I'm not talking about now, but is there something? I find that most people in this ecosystem have something that they want to do at some stage. They're thinking about. Is there one there for you, or are you already doing that now?
I mean, I'm kind of already doing it. I love what I do. I absolutely love waking up every day and helping people invest in this asset class, helping founders grow their companies, create the future that they want to see.
Yep.
And but there, I guess in the future, there is a lot of areas that we need to have impact on and we need to change in order to create the world that we all want to live in.
Climate tech, you mean?
Not just climate tech, but also like the regulations that we need to change in order to make sure that the ecosystem continues to thrive.
Yep.
Regulation changes that we need to fight. And then also just creating the right infrastructure, support, programs, experiences, like community infrastructure.
There's still a lot more ecosystem growth, right?
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Yeah.
It's like there's a lot more that we need to do, and we can learn from our overseas counterparts. There's a lot of things that they've done that we can implement here, but it's a matter of like putting the right people and processes in place.
And how are you finding it here? You want to stay here now? You're here. You're not
Yeah.
going anywhere.
Not going anywhere.
Not going anywhere. So you're embedded in this, growing this ecosystem.
Oh yeah.
It's been pretty exciting the last couple of years.
The growth that Australia has seen in terms of the startup
enormous.
ecosystem from just over the last 10 years it's just so accelerated compared to like we did what it took the US like 20 years to do in like a 5 to 6 year period.
And it's particularly based out of Sydney, I've really felt. I mean, you do get it in the other cities,
Yeah.
but it seems to be there's a big vibe
I don't like
here
to
right
pick
now.
favorites.
No, I know, but that does
We need
feel
to
like
be
there's a
more
vibe.
Team Australia.
We do?
Not Sydney versus Melbourne, because honestly, like we're just not big enough. The entirety of all of Australia fits inside California in every way.
I know, the
except
trouble
for
is
the
we've got all these
geographically.
different governments.
That's a problem,
It's
right?
crazy.
Oftentimes, the local governments will do things that are at the detriment of the wider goal because they have their goals.
Trends.
Trends. What am I seeing?
What are you seeing? I mean, obviously the climate thing is going
Climate
a bit
tech,
crazy.
AI, so hot right now.
But yeah, I was talking to someone about this last night, and he's a tech founder.
Yeah.
He's going, there's not really any proper AI around. All these AI businesses, they're not AI. He goes, they're just renaming it AI so they can get funding. What is your feeling on that? He was quite upset that there were so many people calling their companies AI when really it's just automation.
Yeah, and look, that's been around for a while, right?
Yeah.
Like AI is 10, 12, 15 years in the making here. So like when you talk to people who are like, yeah, I've got 10 years experience, you go, but AI's only been around for like 2. No, it hasn't.
Yeah.
It just hasn't been as frothy and frothy.
It's a good word.
Right? It hasn't been as frothy or as widespread or as mainstream as it is now. Also, what has come to be in the last like year or two is these foundational models that are really enabling a lot of different types of AI development on top of these foundational models. Now, do I believe that Australia is going to be the place that's going to create the next foundational model or like large language learning model? Probably not.
Nope.
But do I believe that there are a number of businesses that can use their unique expertise in order to build on those building blocks to create something unique that drives value? Absolutely. Do I also believe that there is a lot of vaporware on top of AI that is actually not that defensible? Absolutely. My job as an investor is to figure out the difference.
Yeah.
And find the ones that are actually building good value on top of these building blocks. Because ChatGPT, Diffuse, Sora, these are all building blocks. And in order to create something that's truly valuable to an end consumer, you need to take that and then apply your own things on top of it, which is what a lot of these companies are doing.
And they're trying to do, yeah. I think, you know what I think is going to happen, or I hope is going to happen? I think if you look back maybe to that time just before funding went crazy, there was a X amount of companies, there was a lot of companies at like pre-seed and seed, but there weren't that many that were already at Series A. So when it kind of went up, there weren't that many that went up the BCD chain, right? But it seems now there's a lot at Series A, like a lot more. I think, we've seen pretty much every cycle, we've seen maybe 5 or 6 Australian companies really kick off and go properly global. Do you think, because I do, that there's going to be a lot more, like there could be 20 or 30 in that next cycle because there's just the volumes there now?
Yeah, so there was definitely a period of decreased volume and activity in that Series A space over the last year, like 2023. But if you look at historically, like we minted 1 unicorn a year from like 2013 to 2019.
Yeah.
And then we minted like 20.
It's a lot.
It was a lot. Jump. Yeah, but then in last year, 2023, we minted none.
Yes.
New unicorns, by the way. Some unicorns reaffirmed their unicorn value, but we didn't mint any new ones.
Some lost their unicorn value.
Lost their unicorn value. Not many, though.
No.
I think what we're seeing in the next little bit is a correction, again, from that kind of like green shoots, right? We are absolutely seeing more companies getting to that Series A stage and going global. It's been easier than ever to go global, though. And
I mean, COVID, that was a big push from COVID. Yeah. It put the belief in people's mind. I think a lot of people before that, in particular in Australia, thought quite small, and now they don't. And I think that was just a switch that went on.
Now we're online anyway, right? Like,
exactly.
Okay, maybe I can have meetings with people overseas. Maybe I can hire somebody overseas. Yeah, it created, I think COVID did a lot of good in that space.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was downsides, but in terms of like globalization and connecting people globally, absolutely.
Yeah, it's cool, isn't it?
Yeah. Do I think we're going to see more minted unicorns? Absolutely.
Yeah.
And the number of companies getting to that next stage? Absolutely. It's easier than ever to get pre-seed funding and seed funding. Actually, seed funding. I'd say it's easier than ever to get seed funding because there are so many funds that have raised. And it's only going to get, I think, personally, opinion, it's only going to get easier because of the amount of money that is still sitting ready to be deployed.
Yes.
And that the time period over which those funds need to deploy is shortening, right? Like if they raised in 2021, then they've got basically until the end of the year to deploy that.
Well, there's a lot more people wanting to invest that would never have ever considered it before.
Oh, yeah. I get people every day telling me like, hey, I really want to start angel investing. How do I get into it? And I go, great. Aussie Angels is the place to write angel checks.
So, right, last question.
Yes.
Tell me, if I'm sitting here and I'm going, you know what, I want to become, but I'm not going to call Cheryl, not yet. But I'm thinking I want to be an angel investor, or I don't know you to talk to. What's your best advice on where to start? Is there something where people like to do research now because it's so easy to do research? Where can they get research to start educating themselves a little bit more? Yeah,
so actually I do have a website. It's called Max Resources.
Is that like a training business or more of a...
that's just free resources. Right. So I've got a founder page or founder section and an angel section. Yep. So Max Resource, MACK.
We'll put it in the chat.
Yeah.
Not chat, the description. There's no chat.
So there's free resources for angels there. I would say read a book. I've got a book list. Look at education. There's a few like places where you can actually take a course. We run a course as well at Aussie Angels. So we run a course that kind of gives you an introduction to that.
Cool.
But honestly, I would say your best bet is find someone who angel invests and talk to them.
But they might do what you did.
What?
No, I don't really want to.
Yeah, but
most people won't.
Most people will say, I'm happy to talk to you about what I'm doing. They may not share their deal flow with you, but they'll be happy to share this is who I invest in, this is why, this is how much I invest. And if you don't know me, well, hello everyone, I'm Cheryl. You can know me now. Please reach out. Yeah,
come into Cheryl's world.
Yeah, I do open up my calendar for new angels to come and ask me questions.
Cool. Thank you for coming on. It's been good to finally hear your story. I've known you a little while, but I've never obviously gone through, because that'd be weird, gone through your sort of history. So it's been super cool for me to hear it, and I'm sure everyone now can come into Cheryl's world.
Yes, please. You're welcome to.
Thanks for watching today, guys. We'll see you next week, and don't forget to subscribe.